Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. First and foremost, a very Merry Christmas to everybody. Figured dress the part for the occasion tonight. I wanted to make this video, though, because yesterday I uploaded some footage of Ibara fully built. Now, that sample size, extremely small, could have been luck-based, not indicative of any final conclusions or analyses, but I at least thought it would be interesting to see her fully built this early on in the week. What I'm going to do today is go through a whole bunch of things related to the actual math behind the evasion and the accuracy statistics, and a couple hypothetical scenarios. We'll talk about in a second. So what I'm specifically going to be going through step by step here, how to define final hit rate mathematically. We're absolutely going to go into some numbers. I'll keep it as simple and high level for everybody as I can. The second thing, we're going to look at the essentially starting hit rate, go through the evasion rate part of the formula, and then I have a couple situations to actually look at the math. I'm going to look at Ibara versus Elena with no accuracy help, Ibara versus Elena with a fair amount of accuracy help. And then I've actually gotten some feedback that throughout the majority of the ladder of competition, the Earth cast seems to still be fairly relevant. So there's some questions about Ibara versus the Earth cast, and I specifically have her versus a few different hypothetical versions of Zazan that we're going to be looking at as well. So stay tuned for all of this. I really wanted to go through the math of things first, though. I've done a video like this in the past, but worth doing it again. I unfortunately think the game does a really poor job of essentially defining this graphically. For most part, people look at like a stat when you're equipping a piece of equipment and they see this evade line here and it's got that 79. I had someone once say, yeah man, I built an evade Una for the light cast, she's got like 79 evade, and in my head I'm like, oh, you poor thing, like you don't understand, like they didn't understand the actual formula to know that Una is like one of the 5 worst evasion units in the game, and that stat you see in the menu is only one piece of the actual formula. So it is very misleading if you're like comparing two different characters and looking at that evade stat on the screen. So jumping into things, how is hit rate defined? It's really pretty simple. You have your starting hit rate percentage, which is essentially whoever's attacking, that's their accuracy rate. Then you minus the evasion rate of the person they're attacking, and we'll call it the final hit rate. So technically I have a starting hit rate and a final hit rate just for the sake of clarity. Now what goes into these? In terms of the starting hit rate for whoever the attacker is, you look at their dexterity stat, their luck stat, and then there is an accuracy stat throughout the game, which is basically a flat percentage. The evasion part of this also looks at luck, but it takes into the unit's agility as well, and then the evasion stat. So technically, if you were looking at that, say chat, evasion up of 8 is technically that, a quote-unquote evasion right here in the bottom line. And then you subtract the 2 and you get your final hit rate percentage. That's the chance to actually hit. So we're going to look at this just a smidge closer. The actual formula, as you can see at the very top here, very kind of complex for your average person. If you were to try to calculate this in Excel, let's say, though, you could use this exact formula, just put an equal sign in front of it, and fill in the dexterity, luck, and accuracy stats. We'll get to how you can do that soon. And it would spit out the number of the starting hit rate percentage. In terms of actually kind of breaking it out so it makes just a little more graphical sense, it essentially takes the dexterity stat, some stats and math that goes on here, adds in the luck stat, and this kind of gets adjusted as well, and then the accuracy stat at the very end there. That's kind of if you were to break it out for the order of operations per se in the stats. There's one really important key factor to keep in mind, though, in terms of the hit rate percentage, is that if you're attacking from the side, you get an automatic 15% accuracy buff, and you're attacking from someone from the back, you actually get a 30% accuracy percentage buff as well, just to the total number. If we're looking at the evasion rate percentage, this is the same thing. That's the full equation. You can put that in Excel if you wanted to make your own little cheat sheet. But same idea. Essentially, there's a math methodology to agility. The luck, one interesting thing to note is that this luck equation is exactly the same for both accuracy and evasion in terms of hit rates. And then finally, there, a little extra to impute the evasion rate. So this is the really long, high, complicated way if you do this. You don't actually need to do a ton of the math, but it does help if you can. So the first situation we're going to look at here is Ibara with no accuracy help whatsoever. So I have this build here on the left. This Lunar Tome is a magic build, so that's, not a ton of extra accuracy. Garmia Cloak, I got Bahamut. I do have some of the, this is a high end. I like to stress test things by, doing end game hypotheticals. This is a high end potential like master rank and guild ranks. And then if we're looking at the actual stats here, you essentially would take for her accuracy, her dexterity stat, you would then take her luck stat, And then she technically has this 14% accuracy, which comes from some of the guild stuff in the master ranks. There's probably a little bit on the lunar tome that when you add it all together, it's an extra 14%. Other things to really consider here is what the vision cards are on her teammates. So for here, I have Charlotte using the Coral vision card, and I have Cloud using Scorpion Sentinel, just for some context, because obviously your party's vision cards will influence the stats here. And if we're looking at the, well, quote-unquote math, if you were to put in the dexterity here, the luck, and the extra accuracy, and if you were to essentially feed those three variables into the formula I showed you before, you get a starting hit rate of 221%. You don't have to remember that number. We'll get back to it soon. We're now going to look at Elena to essentially look at the evasion rate, which we have to subtract from this, which is going to be the final hit rate, the chance to actually hit. And so for Elena, I gave her the Santa Claus, I gave her the Summer Kilf TMR, Tetrasulfid. This is like as evasive as I could possibly make her given the build. I do have the master rank a little bit higher at 30 rather than the, I think I had, what, 25, just because Light does have more characters, so you can get that a little bit higher. And essentially, these are the stats I end up getting. Long story short, two other assumptions here. I have Engelbert using the Bahamut vision card, and I have Jaden using the Jaden vision card, just to kind of, you know, make this a typical party that you'll see. And if you put in the agility, the luck, and the extra evasion into the formula I showed you, you get an evasion rate of 233%. What that means is, if you take this attacker, that's Ibara, 221 minus 233 is negative 12. What that means is in the current, you know, build that I have for Ibara, and if she goes to attack Elena, it's a 0% hit chance. She's not going to be able to hit her at all. Mathematically impossible unless you're attacking from the side or behind. And even then, if you're attacking from the side, you add 15% to this, so it'd be a 3% hit chance, or it'd be a 18% hit chance. That's obviously really bad, but we haven't done anything to improve her accuracy, so what happens if we do? And this is something you have to consider. This is not impossible. I've made a couple changes here, and I've boxed them. Number one, the Lunar Tome. I've actually made this the AIM build rather than the Magic build. It might be overkill. It's about an extra 10%. The Alexandrite Ring, which gives you 40% accuracy. The Ramu Esper, which I recommended, gives her an extra 22% accuracy on the nodes. Ends up giving her these stats. And then important vision card tweak here. I gave Charlotte the Aegion vision card instead of the Coral vision card. Aegion, one of the party buffs, is an extra 15% accuracy. Gives a completely different formula here. Her accuracy rate is now 305%. So if we go back and do this math, this like hyper accurate Ibara, 305% minus 233% means the chance to hit this like hyper evade Elena is 73% from the front. If you're attacking her from the back, add 30% to this, guaranteed chance to hit. Now, obviously, that's like a hyper Ibara build. It's probably overkill going with the AIM build on the book. And to be fair, this is Elena, like one of the top tier evade units in the game. If this is like Engelbert or Jaden, you don't really have to invest necessarily as much in the accuracy. But this 73% is pretty darn good as far as I'm concerned in terms of a hit rate for the best, one of the best evade unit characters in the game to a character who we've like kind of definitively said stinks from an accuracy perspective. Totally still fixable though. Some extra things to keep in mind, because obviously that's just like builds one minus the other. There's a whole bunch of extra factors. Number one, Ibara does technically have a ability on her sub job that adds 30% to the final hit rate. So theoretically, in this situation, if Ibara attacked Elena from the front with that ability of extra 30% chance to hit, you would get over 100%. So Ibara would 100% guaranteed hit the Elena. The other thing to keep in mind, Elena does have an Evildoer's Beware buff, where it increases her evasion rate by 25%. So hypothetically, if Elena used that buff, you would take 25% away from this hit rate, so that definitely is material. Engelbert and Jaden aren't nearly as evasive as Elena, so sure, maybe Ibara can hit Elena all that consistently. Maybe she misses once or twice, but Cloud is definitely going to hit her with Sharpshoot or with his guaranteed slash attack. So even if Ibara misses, Elena is still going to get the 30% or 38% lightning debuff resistance, and Cloud's going to probably one-shot her with the guaranteed hit on the next turn. So although Elena might have a lower hit chance, like Engelbert and Jaden, Ibara is still going to smoke him in one hit, which we saw in the videos yesterday. This is also using Santa Claus for Elena, so this is like as up to date in terms of evasion as you could possibly be. And then there are actually still a handful of other factors in terms of external accuracy or evade buffs. So like Luel's TMR increases both evasion and accuracy, so that hypothetically might make Elena way more evasive than these stats are showing. Other things like unit affinity, one of the most slept on mechanics in the game. I'll probably do a video on it. Long story short, unit affinity, if you have upwards of level 5 unit affinity, you get buffs to both your dexterity and luck stat if you're standing within 2 squares of a teammate. So in this situation here, I'm looking at them one-on-one, but theoretically, if Elena was, level 5 affinity with Engelbert and Jaden, and she was standing next to them, she would technically get buffs to her luck stat, which would increase her evasion rate. The same thing that could be said though for Ibara, where technically if she was standing next to Charlotte or Cloud, she would get some dexterity and luck buffs, which might increase her accuracy to hitting Elena. So that's kind of like a hidden mechanic, which does throw a wrinkle into things as well in terms of final hit rate chance. Whether the unit is attacking from the side or the back completely changes things. And then there are external buffs, like 9S has a 40% accuracy buff that he can give to party members. This would fix a lot of things for Ibara right off the bat. So the final hit rate that I've shown you is not the final thing. There's a bunch of extra factors. I think the point I'm trying to make, though, is that it's not a far shot for her to still hit one of the top tier evade units in the game. Now, if we're looking at this Zazan calculation here, I have a couple different builds for him because you can go on a huge gradient of how evasive you want to make him. And so I essentially made this very first one, and I have 4 of them. I'm going to go through them quickly. Basically, the stats you see are using Noctis's vision card, and I got secrets of the heart on Oberyn, but going more into all 4 of them. So if you went Zazan, this is the first build, like full toxic evade, like as big as you could possibly make his evasion stats. So if you give him Solitary Lion, Secrets of the Heart, the Titan Vision card gives 20% evasion to the whole party. Theoretically, the final hit rate of Ibara to Zazan from the front, 41%. Not great, self-admittedly. That's fine. Second build here, slightly less toxic evade, where essentially instead of the Titan Vision card, I have Halloween monsters here, which gives 15% agility, which does technically still give Zazan some extra evasion, because if you recall, agility is one of the primary stats in the equation. It does increase the hit rate, though, when you take out the Vision card, so now it's 56% instead. If you take a third, kind of like a blended evade, where essentially you still keep Secrets of the Heart, but use Noctis's Vision card instead. So since the Noctis Vision card gives evasion or agility or luck, you're technically kind of taking it down a peg. The hit rate's still 61%, like that's not great, self-admittedly, trust me. And then the fourth to be like Zazan, like minimal evade. So if you had Solitary Lion on him, you took out Secrets of the Heart and used these other 2 instead, the final hit rate's 85%, so still pretty darn good. And if we're talking damage in terms of how well can she actually like fight him, I got that calculation too. So if we take that third Zazan build, and again, if you're looking at these, like what's the most common one you're probably going to see? I think 3 is probably a pretty safe one, where if you're trying to run an evasive Zazan, you are going to need Secrets of the Heart in some capacity. Whether or not you need the Titan card or Halloween monsters could be overkill, but I feel like these 2, at least at minimum, you're probably going to see 75% of the time. So I chose this one, that hit rate of 61%. Well, let's say she does hit him, and I'm assuming that Ibara uses her turn 1 buff, which gives her the magic attack up, the Man-Eater, the magic resistance penetration, and Zazan, based on this build that I've created here, has roughly 6,600 HP. Well, I use the damage calculator on WOTV Calc, put this all in here. What's the final damage number she does to him? Regular, not critical, would be about 5,200. So not one-shotting him. He's still got 1,300 health left, not including the courage or re-raise if he used those abilities ahead of time. And quite honestly, I'm okay with this. People have had questions about me doing a video on Ibara facing a mono Earth cast, and I'm going to do that. My Ibara will be completely done by tomorrow, and I can do that analysis. Quite frankly, I would be surprised if she and Charlotte and Cloud could beat the Earth cast, and quite frankly, I don't want them to. If Lightning could beat Earth, I would say there's something wrong with the balance of the game. So for those of you that are seeing an overabundance of mono Earth comps and you're struggling to find a way to beat them, then quite frankly, no, Ibara is probably not the way to beat that Earth comp. You probably want to save your Vizier for when June comes out if you have 2B and Tifa and you want to run some Wind to potentially counter all the Earth you're seeing. I will say at the top end of the game, like the top 25 guilds, it's way more dark and light. I don't see nearly as much Earth pervasively as those 2 elements. But yeah, long story short, she's not going to kill him, but I will say this, when she hits him with this attack, this Wailing Storm, it's a 30% imperil. Like Cloud is going to smoke him on the next turn, guaranteed. like guaranteed hits. So sure, maybe she doesn't kill him here, but Cloud Sharpshoot is going to absolutely finish him off. And sure, maybe he procs Courage, and that's fine. He gets an extra turn, and hopefully he can kill him the next turn. Because Ibara's got a 61% chance to hit. Charlotte can probably hit. Cloud can definitely sharpshoot a second time, no big deal. So yeah, overall, like I still don't think it's impossible to beat the Earthcast. Just you probably shouldn't. And that's in a nutshell. Hopefully this is informative. I think it gives a little more contextual evidence to Ibara's accuracy and how bad it can be and how good it can be and how viable it can be. And sure, there are some super hyper evade units in the game, but others that aren't. And I think she does just fine, if not really good for what she does. And I think most of what we've mentioned in my character review in terms of her changing and shaping the identity of the Lightning Cat still remains true. And I still think she's got some legitimate lasting power in the state of the game because she's got some great passives and some great abilities that are really, truly kind of universal in terms of lightning and perils and defense and spirit buffs and things of that nature. So thanks for watching. Again, hopefully you've had a great holiday season with friends and family. Looking forward to doing the new year with everybody, and good luck pulling, and I'll talk to you all soon.